Hey everybody, it's Kennedy Hawk from the MCM team, and we are continuing our Shield villain or scenario primer guides for the Agents of Shield campaign box. So we are on to the fourth scenario from the campaign box, the Thunderbolts scenario, and I really enjoy this carousel of giant minions that jump around the screen. So let's get into it and talk all about the scenario and the best ways to tackle it. So, let's jump on into what's going to be in the video. So we're going to do an introduction, which we're doing right now, our scenario overview, some tips and tricks. We'll talk about some heroes, those 9 heroes we've been using for the shield box to judge good or bad, easy or hard. We'll talk about some cards in each of the aspects that can be helpful, some modular recommendations or not, a boost icon overview, and then wrap up with our archery scale. So, the main hook here is we have big minions that are swarming the board. There's a victory display kill counter, so we want to kill and get so many things into the victory display so that we can take down the main villain, Citizen V. And it is super modular or not, we'll see, and more, depending on how you like to play your games of Marvel Champions. But the main thing is that there's going to be a bunch of these giant mega minions jumping from player to player, and it's really hard to get rid of them because they're all elites and have other things preventing us from just wiping them out in one hit. So, the villain card. Very boring, very generic villain. 2 scheme, 2 attack in standard mode, 3 scheme, 2 attack in expert mode, 12 hit points per player, and 16 hit points per player. This is one of the few things in the scenario that scales per player hit point wise. All of the mega minions just have a static value, which can be very brutal in solo versus multiplayer. Citizen V on both sides has this ability that they cannot be defeated unless there are at least 1 per player Thunderbolt minions in the victory display. So in solo that is 1 minion, in 4-player that is 4 minions, and so on and so forth. We also have this forced interrupt for both versions. When Citizen V would activate against you during step 2 of the villain phase, only during step 2, not during the reveal and counter cards part, if you were engaged with a Thunderbolt minion, Citizen V does not activate and heals 4 damage instead. So that counts for schemes and attacks, which is great. In expert mode, he heals 6 damage instead. But that means that we're really not going to be engaging with the villain much until later in the scenario once we defeat that Thunderbolt in front of us. And this is something that's very different between solo and multiplayer in the Thunderbolts scenario. And we'll talk about why as we get further into the scenario details. Main scheme shenanigans. There's a really interesting setup for this scenario. So when you set up, you choose 1 modular set plus 1 per player additional modular sets, each with an elite Thunderbolt minion. So that means in 1 player, you're going to have 2 of these Thunderbolt elite minion modular sets. In 4-player, you're going to have 5 of them, meaning 5 of these elite Thunderbolt minions will show up. And we'll go through those mod sets so you can see what I mean when I say an elite Thunderbolt mod set. You're going to set the minions from those sets aside and shuffle the rest of their encounter sets into the encounter deck and reveal the Justice Like Lightning environment. On the 1B side, each Thunderbolt minion is going to gain guard, meaning you can't really attack Citizen V until they're defeated. The ones in front of you at least, or they're moved or something like that. That ends up not being a big deal because we can't defeat Citizen V until we've defeated enough of those Thunderbolt minions. So a lot of times you're focusing on those minions and then diverting attention to the villain. That could be different in multiplayer versus solo, and we'll talk about that here soon. Forced response. After a player attacks a Thunderbolt minion, that minion engages that player. So if I attack someone else's Thunderbolt minion, that Thunderbolt minion is going to jump over and be engaged with me. And there's also a loose standing Thunderbolt minion that can engage you from the environment. So this means that minions are going to be moving around left and right. Some of these minions have triggers that happen when they engage you, so it can be very hectic as these minions are jumping around on a carousel. It also means that it can be useful to have the entire team target 1 minion, depending on who the minion is, or have 1 person focus on that minion so they don't move around a lot. We have 11 threat per player as our scheme threshold, so we have a lot of room for threat in this scenario, but it is a 1 scheme scenario, so if they do reach 11 in solo, you've lost the game. So you got to be a little bit careful with that. But the main thing we're talking about here is this merry-go-round or carousel of giant minions. So let's look at that environment that gets revealed in our setup. we have the Justice-like Lightning environment. When revealed, each player reveals a random set-aside Thunderbolt minion, and those were set aside at the beginning of the scenario. Reveal and attach the remaining set-aside minion face up here. In Expert mode, give each of these villains a tough status card, so everybody's tough, all the time, ping damage, super strong. And then flip this card. So we're going to flip this card that has flavor text on it that we'll never see again, super sad. And get to the other side. The minion attached here is in play and can be targeted by attacks and abilities. But that means when we target that minion with an attack, they're going to engage us. So we kind of get one minion that's sitting in reserve that we don't have to worry about. Sometimes the right choice is still to attack that minion, but that does mean if you don't defeat that minion, you're going to have to deal with an activation from them. So be careful. Forced Interrupt. When the round ends, attach the Thunderbolt minion with the most damage here, swapping it with the minion already attached here, if any. Heal 1 per player damage from attached minion. In Expert mode, heal an additional 1 per player damage from that minion and give it a tough status card. So in Solo Expert mode, that minion is going to heal 2 and get a tough. In Standard, they're just going to heal 1. But in 4-player, they're going to heal 8 and a tough, which is a lot. That's like half the minion's health when we get to these minions. So that can be quite intimidating. The way our group plays this, I am not a rules guru by any means, so people can let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. But if we have, let's say, 2 Thunderbolt minions left, and they each have 2 damage on them, one is attached to Thunderbolt's backup, and one is engaged with a player, we force ourselves to swap the active minion, just because it feels more thematic to the scenario for us. But read the rules, and you guys do you. That's what I would say. So, there's just a little bit of more generic scenario stuff, right? Like I could go over normally like the MVPs of the encounter deck, but the MVPs are really going to be these Thunderbolt minions. But we will go through some of the scenario cards, so you're prepared for them. General V has a sword. When it's revealed, it's an extra activation, which can be really annoying. It's not an activation during step 2 of the encounter phase, so the villain will activate against you with +1/+1 stats, which can be really annoying. There's Jolt here, who's a villainous Thunderbolt minion, but not elite. No victory on them. 0 scheme, 1 attack, and 5 health. When defeated, place 3 threat in the main scheme. Hero action, exhaust your hero, place 1 parlay counter on Jolt. If there are 3 or more parlay counters there, remove Jolt from the game. That's what we usually do, is try to get rid of that minion so we don't have to deal with them. There's 3 copies of Innocent Bystanders, a really annoying card. It has 4 uses, and has a forced response after you attack an enemy or an enemy attacks you. Either spend 1 resource of any type or place 1 threat in the main scheme, 2 in Expert mode, and then remove a bystander counter from here. So basically for the next 4 attacks, you're either going to be placing threat or spending money. And attacks either way, which can be really annoying. Notice it is after you attack an enemy, so, think about it that way. It is an obligation, so when this is in your play area, other players are unable to help you with that. There are 3 copies of that card as well. We've got 2 more cards we're going to go through here quick, and there's a couple side schemes as well that rotate minions around, so be prepared for those in multiplayer. But these are the treacheries that can be real pains. So we have tap in. When revealed, engage the Thunderbolt minion with the least damage that is not engaged with you, and that minion activates against you. So this acts as an extra activation card. If no minion activated this way, Citizen V activates against you. So if you already had that minion in your face, you're getting punched even worse. Really painful. 3 boost icons. Makes sense. We also have down but not out. Choose a random Thunderbolt minion from the victory display and reveal it. Place damage on that minion until it has 5 remaining hit points. Then remove this card from the game. If no minion entered play this way, this card gains search. So this is going to bring a minion back from the victory display. One of the few ways that a minion can come back from the victory display and really reset your progress, trying to get to the point where you can actually defeat Citizen V. Alright, but the real stuff of this scenario, the stars, are our Thunderbolt minions. And here I'm showing the 6 Thunderbolt minions that come in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. campaign box expansion. But if you've been watching the preview articles for the hero packs in this wave, we've been seeing more Thunderbolt minions come out. I think in the Winter Soldier preview pack, they just spoiled a Blizzard Thunderbolt modular. So definitely check those out, because we're going to get more variety into this scenario as we move on. So obviously, like we said in setup, in solo, you're going to be picking 2 of these. In 4-player, you're going to be choosing 5 of these minions. So 4 players is actually a really standardized experience right now. Whereas in solo, Your experience can change wildly depending on which two of these modular sets you decide to include. So we're going to have a slide and go through each of the modular sets to talk about some of the theme and some of the tactics to take on that modular set, because that becomes really, really important for thinking about the scenario. So all of these minions, things they have in common, they all have 4 boost icons, but you're never going to deal with that in this scenario because they're always minions or in the victory display. So luckily, in this scenario, they're not going to pop out as 4 boost icons, but watch out if you include these in another scenario because you're going to have 4 boost icon boost cards. Rough. They all have Villainous, they all have Victory 1, they all have the Elite and Thunderbolt trait, and at least 14 hit points, which, by the way, happens to be a lot in solo. So they can be quite the pain to punch down, but less so in multiplayer. Now this is kind of balanced in the scenario, because in multiplayer you have more people to punch them, but then you have to deal with more minions. But it can feel a little bit different playing a multiplayer game versus a solo game because of this. In a solo game, you only have to defeat one of these minions, so you pick one of the two, either the one engaged with you or the other one. You try to knock them out as fast as you can. Try to not have to take 2 minions to the face at once, so if you're going to attack the one on the backup, you want to make sure you can defeat it that turn so you're not having to engage it twice. And you can focus on one of these characters. In 4-player, right, you could rid one player of the guard minion in front of them, and that player could then start attacking Citizen V, but you still can't defeat Citizen V until 4 of these are defeated, so you still have to have some people focusing on minions and juggling these minions into the right spot. So we'll go through the minions and their individual modular slides, but let's get on to what makes up a Thunderbolt mod, right? So we have an Elite Thunderbolt traded minion that's going to let us include them in this scenario. They have a big hit point pool. So again, in solo, that is very different. Getting to 16 damage in solo, very, very hard for a solo player. In multiplayer, you can probably get rid of Moonstone in the first round if the team rallies, with 4 people each doing 4 damage. Keep in mind that when someone's engaged with Moonstone, that means that they are not getting activations from the villain. The villain is healing instead. So as long as you're not throwing damage onto the villain, you can care less about that, and it might be better to have Moonstone engaged with you than the villain themselves. They all have the victory keywords. They're all going to go to the victory display, but remember, things can pull them out of the victory display. And then each of these modular sets has 2, when revealed, find named character and reveal them. That character activates against you. So these are additional extra activation cards. So each of these mod sets has activation cards. We also have Tap In, which is an activation card. Citizen V's Sword, which is an activation card. So a lot of extra activations to deal with in the scenario. In the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box, every single one of these mods has a side scheme, and they are all 6-card modular sets. Now, we don't know all of the cards of the ones that are in the packs after this, so I won't be updating the video, but I'll go over those mods in a separate video in the future. But for now, this is what we know. There are 6 different Thunderbolts, more coming, obviously, based on the Falcon and Winter Soldier articles that released recently. And that's what, the generic theme of a Elite Thunderbolt set is. Each set has its own, mechanical pull, so depending on which 2 mechanical pulls you combine in solo or which 5 in multiplayer, you can get a different experience. So that's one of the things that I would, sort of knock this scenario on, at least in its current state, is that the 4-player game mode is very standardized. It is very regimented. Things will happen that you expect to happen. There's a little bit of randomness because there's 4 of those mod sets and you don't know which one's going to pop up first, but it's going to be a pretty standardized experience, I would say. Whereas in solo, each time you play, you could play a completely different game because of the mods you pull in. So it feels infinitely modular to a solo player, but very Sinister Six generic-y, the same every time to a 4-player team, which is a little bit of a weird feeling. Alright, so let's go through these 6 mod sets. So first let's look at Moonstone. She is a 2-scheme, 2-attack, 16 hit point minion with Villainous, Victory 1, Aerial, Elite, and Thunderbolt traits. A forced response after Moonstone activates, give her a tough status card. That's a lot of tough to deal with, so Piercing, really good against Moonstone. We've got 2 copies of Gravitational Pull, which is going to go find Moonstone and reveal her. If she's already in play, she engages you and then activates against you. If no activation happens, this card gains Surge. You might be saying, well, how can that not happen? You should always be able to find her. Well, there's 3 places that we never look to find characters. One of them is if it's face down as an encounter card in front of you. And another one of them is if it's in the victory display. We can't find things from the victory display unless something tells us to specifically grab something from it. So when we're searching with Gravitational Pull, if Moonstone's already been defeated, that card is just going to search. We have 2 copies of Psychological Manipulation. In Alter Ego mode, this is just going to discard an ally or support you control, or gain Surge. In Hero mode, this is going to deal X damage to the friendly character with the fewest remaining hit points, where X is your hero's attack. So this sends your hero off attacking someone. As a Hawkeye player, this can be really brutal. Multiple times I have tried to snipe other people on my team or defeated them if there wasn't a tough or some other way to prevent damage happening card out there. So we have to be really careful with this card, especially with high attack characters, because they can snipe things, even themselves, right, to the friendly character with the fewest remaining hit points, hero, ally, whatever. Typically this is going to be an ally, because allies come in with 1 to 3, maybe 4 hit points. They've already taken some from taking their activations, but I have seen it be a hero before, and it's very painful. Rule the Skies is our side scheme. Each aerial character gets +1 attack and a hazard symbol with a boost that is, if activating enemy has aerial trait, give it an additional boost card. So basically, if it's boosted with Moonstone, who has Villainous, you're going to get 2 boost icons and an additional boost card, which would be 4 plus a boost, which is brutal. So here the theme is more like thematic, right? Or the mechanic is more thematic. Like these cards don't all play together. I guess extra activations give us more tough cards on Moonstone, but the Psychological Manipulation is just a really good thematic card for Moonstone. The Rule of Skies is just playing off her aerial trait, and there's some other aerial minions that can buff. It also gives aerial players a buff, so sweet. But that is Moonstone. Next, let's look through Songbird, another aerial elite Thunderbird. So 0 scheme, 0 attack. Wimpy, right? 16 health. Villainous in Victory 1, and she's a claw. Apparently sound has something to do with extra boost cards in Marvel Champions, just like fire is indirect damage, fire bad, indirect damage. Forced Interrupt. When Songbird activates, give her 1 additional boost card for this activation. So even on schemes, she's getting 2 boost cards, so she's very variable in what she puts out. Spoiler alert, in this scenario, I think there's only 1 card amongst all the cards that has 0 boost icons. So 2 boost cards is at least 2 boost icons. We have Hard Sound, which is the card that's going to go find Songbird, reveal her, have her activate against you, or Surge. And then she has 3 1-ofs. So we have Solid Sound Constructs and Hard Sound Bindings. So Constructs will attach to Songbird or the villain. The enemy attached to Songbird, otherwise attached to the villain. Attached enemy loses Stalwart. When attached enemy would gain a confused or status card, discard this card instead, and has an amplify icon. So the way to get rid of it is to put a status onto that character. That status is cancelled, but at least you get rid of the amplify, which is really bad for Songbird. We also have Hard Sound Bindings. When you would attack, discard Hard Sound Bindings instead, then you are stunned. So she's giving out statuses and wanting to absorb statuses, all the while like manipulating boost cards. If we look at Hard Sound, the boost ability is to give the activating enemy an additional boost card. So let's say you have Solid Sound Constructs on Songbird. She gets 2 Hard Sounds as her boost, so each of those have 2 for their boost value, so that's 4 scheme. And then she gets an additional boost card for each of those Hard Sounds, so she gets 2 more boost cards, which could be 2 copies of a Hard Sound Bindings that stuns us, and if we are already stunned, gives the character an additional boost card if we were already stunned. So we would boost into a 5th card, which is just insanity. Boost card shenanigans. We also have Sonic Bubble, which again, more of a thematic card. Forced Interrupt. When any amount of damage would be dealt to an enemy, remove an equal amount of threat from here. So you're basically turning damage into threat to help remove this side scheme. Kind of a cool bonus for players, actually. Next we've got Black Widow. This was the first scenario from the box. 2 scheme, 1 attack, Elite Thunderbolt, Retaliate 1, Villainous, and Victory 1 with 14 hit points, our lowest hit point total so far. Force response, after Black Widow schemes against you, search the encounter deck and discard pile for a copy of Handspring and attach it to her. Otherwise, you are confused. So the key here is we can avoid this by not flipping down against Black Widow. Handspring itself attaches to Black Widow, otherwise attaches to the villain. An attached enemy would take damage from an attack, deal that damage to the attacking character instead, and discard this card. So it is a preparation for the minion Black Widow. We have 2 copies of Pale Little Spider that is going to go find Black Widow, reveal her, have her activate, and a copy of Pride of the Red Room, which places an additional threat here for each preparation card in play. So that is going to include the potentially 2 Handsprings that are out there from the encounter deck, but also any of the preparations that might be out there if you're playing as Black Widow, which can be, or anybody that's running preparations, but Black Widow, right? For now, at least. We have Radioactive Man, 18 hit point monster here. 1 scheme, 2 attack, Elite, Thunderbolt, Villainous, and Victory 1, the most common minion in all of Marvel Champions. Was in Masters of Evil from the core set, and I think was a Spectrum Nemesis? Spectrum, I think. Villainous and Victory, 1 scheme, 2 attack. This guy's brutal for leadership players like myself. Forced response, after Radioactive Man activates against you, deal 1 damage to each character you control. Each character you control. So allies with 2 hit points now get 1 activation and are dead. So you are going to be defending with those allies so that their death doesn't matter as much. But it is brutal when this guy is out there. So he is one you definitely want to get rid of or sort of have passed to the player that's not using a lot of allies. Maybe a protection player wants to take that damage with Energy Barrier and throw it back at Radioactive Man. We have 2 copies of Radiation Exposure, which is an attachment that attaches to your identity. If you have a Gamma trait, this attachment gives you +1 attack instead. Otherwise, it's going to give you -1 scheme, -1 attack. And after you recover, you can discard 1 card from your hand to discard this Radiation Exposure. We have Power of the Atom. When revealed, we're going to go find Radioactive Man, reveal him, have him activate against us, the normal find and activate card. And then we have this cool mini-game side scheme, Runaway Nuclear Reaction. Force response, after Radioactive Man has dealt any amount of damage, place an equal amount of threat here. If there is 10 or more threat here, deal 10 damage to each character and discard Runaway Nuclear Reaction. Now, our team has played where we try to use Muster Courage to tough us all up. Radioactive Man enough times to pop this and then wipe out all the Thunderbolts with it, and it is super fun. So definitely recommend trying it out. Next we have Mach 4, a 1 scheme 2 attack 16 hit point aerial elite Thunderbolt minion with Villainous and Victory 1. Common. Each character with the aerial trait cannot make basic defenses against Mach 4's attacks. This can be brutal. I've had, with extra activation cards, Mach 4 attack me 3 times in a turn and not be able to defend because I don't have an aerial character, meaning my allies can't defend and I can't defend. Super brutal. So the Treachery card Supersonic that finds Mach 4, reveals him, and has him attack can be very painful. We also have Blasters, which I have found to be an overly obnoxious card. It's got attached to Mach 4, otherwise attached to the enemy with the highest attack. All that enemy's attacks gain overkill and ranged, and after you deal damage to the attached enemy, you can spend 2 energy resources to discard it. Typically, easy to meet condition, but also painful because it costs you a lot of money and it forces you to attack him, which will force him to engage you in the Thunderbolt scenario. Seeking Missiles attaches to Mach 4, 4 uses counters. After he activates you, you remove 1 missile to take some indirect. Again, fire, explosion, indirect, bad. And then we have Aerial Dogfight, which is a 3 + hinder 2 per player side scheme, which reduces the damage each aerial character takes from each attack by 2 unless the attacker or attack has the aerial trait and has a hazard icon. So even though this could be helpful to Angel, you probably don't want the hazard icon out there forever. So just a brutal mod set. And finally we have Batroc. 1 scheme, 2 attack, 16 hit points, Villainous, Victory, and the worst ability of all, Forced Interrupt. When Batroc engages you, discard 1 card from your hand. So looking at all of these other minions, they're all after they activate against you, gain some special ability. This guy is after he engages you, you discard a card from your hand. So that means every time someone attacks Batroc and he moves players, you're going to be discarding a card. So if Batroc is on the board, you want 1 player to deal with them, and you want Batroc sitting in front of that player continuously and not moving around. It's kind of like a weird key strategy decision you have to make as a team. You've got to find Batroc, reveal him, or let him move around, which is painful, and have him activate against you cards. And then you've got some cards that I will not even try to pronounce, but one of them is a Surge and moves all the minions around the table. And then another one is that after you engage a minion, you mill your deck a little bit, and then place threat onto that scheme with an acceleration token for the cards discarded. Just like a weird little, like, awkward side scheme that puts some threat pressure out there. But yeah, a really painful scenario. He's leaping around, moving people all around the board in this merry-go-round style, which is especially bad when Batroc is out there, because he's just like ripping cards out of people's hands as he leaps around the table. Alright, that was a lot, so let's talk through some general tips and tricks for this scenario. In this scenario, you can really focus on building, right? Some of these minions have 1 scheme or 2 attack plus a villainous boost. 2 isn't horrible, right, with an encounter, even with a boost card. Typically, we can defend against that and still be able to build up our board, or we can stun the character and build up our board. So take time to build up your board. 11 threat per player is really high. That's 44 threat in multiplayer. So you're going to have turns where 2 of you can flip down, let the minions scheme, and just build out your board state until your team is ready to start taking out Thunderbolts one at a time. You also have to do that to set up and figure out which Thunderbolt needs to be where and how do we take out that Thunderbolt to let them do the least damage along the way. Forget about the villain. That's my next option for you. Some people feel like as soon as their Thunderbolt is dead, they should start attacking the villains so they don't move Thunderbolts around. The only situation I see that useful in is if Batroc is out there and you don't want Batroc bouncing around, hitting people. If you can't defeat Batroc, maybe you leave him where he is and start putting some damage on the villain. But especially in multiplayer, as long as someone is engaged with a Thunderbolt, Citizen V is going to be healing some of that damage you're dealing to them, so you're better off just focusing on those minions and helping the rest of your team out, and getting to the point where the villain is the one activating and not the minions instead. So engage with the merry-go-round, engage with the carousel. It's there for a reason, right? They made it so that you want to engage with the minions, so fall into that trap a little bit, because it actually helps you out. Next is to focus fire. Don't try to chip little pieces of damage at each minion. Don't be afraid to hit the minion that's at Thunderbolt's backup and pull them to engage with you. You might have to deal with 2 activations, but especially in solo, getting rid of 1 minion means you have 1 more villain phase with that extra minion activation before they go away to Thunderbolt's backup. So don't chip away at multiple targets, especially in multiplayer. If you're doing 8 to something and then it becomes the most damage thing and it heals that 8 and gains a tough card, well then you've just done nothing with your turn, right? So focus as a team, figure out which minion is the most important one to get rid of, who can handle their minion for that turn, where do we want the minion to end up, what order should we attack in, and then focus fire on that one character you're trying to defeat each round. And don't find too hard. Don't do what my group did and not read the rulebook and find out that find means these characters cannot come back from the victory display. We were pulling them back from the victory display when these extra activation cards came out, and that was brutal. They can come out from that Thunderbolt scenario card, but they will not be found from this find ability, which I really wish there had been reminder text on this card for that, because it's not a commonly used term in the game, and I feel like a lot of groups probably make that mistake. So if you see something that says find radioactive and reveal him and you've just gotten rid of him, leave him in the victory display. This card surges and just move on. Don't feel like you have to deal with that 18 hit point monstrosity a second time. Alright, so let's talk through the heroes and some of the solutions for this scenario. So I think easy mode in this scenario are characters that can build, that want to build, characters that like to spam statuses, right? If you can turn off the villainous or get rid of those minion activations, you can really control the game. B tier are kind of control-ish characters, and what I mean by that are players that want to control the board fully every turn. There's a little bit too much going on, a little bit of hecticness, and decision-making becomes really hard. I also think tempo characters have a hard time because they're doing a little bit of building and a little bit of damage, but that little bit of damage keeps getting healed, so they're not actually making progress from half of their turn, and they have to pivot and play their tempo deck like it's a control deck. Hard mode, and I say rush here, but rush can be a really viable strategy here, but it can also be really difficult, especially in multiplayer, which is generally true, but if you're all running rush decks, you're going to run into trouble. But here, if you have to shoot through 4 of these giant 16 hit point minions, and then do 16 per player to the villain, it's basically similar to like a normal scenario, because it's the per player in the first phase is like the 4 minions, and then you have the villain at the end, but it becomes a daunting amount of health to chew through and to sequence for these rush players, especially with the guard minion in their face. And ally builds against Radioactive Man, they suck. So, just take that for what it's worth. Alright, so these characters, where did I place them? I have Gamora as B tier. Her ability really gets turned off, right? You deal damage to something, you can try to deal it to the right minion, but if you're attacking the minion in front of you and dealing damage to the other minion, you're juggling this math of which minion is going to heal this damage off of them that I just did. So she tends to be able to win this scenario, but have a little bit of a harder time than someone who can build and then just burst giant minions off the board in one hit. So those characters are characters like Rocket, where you can get a bunch of tech upgrades out there and just go crazy drawing cards and dealing excess damage. Characters like Groot, where you can take your flip downs, really build up your growth counters, and then just be able to I am Groot smash face into these villains. For our shield-like characters, I think Captain America is a pretty easy mode character. Yes, he can be a tempo character, but you can also play him as a 1-2 punch character, right? Punch, punch, punch for 2, and punch for 2, or punch for 3 and punch for 3, and aggression. And he can really lay down the law on the villain pretty quickly. He also has access to stun, which is very powerful, and some things like shield block to really be able to slow those minions down. Nothing feels better than shield tossing around the room and hitting all the Thunderbolts and defeating them all at once. It is such a lovely experience. I have Hawkeye as easy mode as well. He can have a little bit of a hard time with survivability. There are a lot of high boost icon count cards in this scenario. But between Mockingbird and all the status conditions you have access to, you can really do a pretty good job of slowing the villains down. You can also burst through those tough counters in expert mode, which is super useful, whether it's with Explosive Arrow to remove everyone's tough counter for everyone to start the game, or our Vibranium Arrow to use piercing. We have a really good shot here with Hawkeye. And Black Widow I have as more of a tempo control character here. She does have access to Confuse, which is nice, but she is a little bit too much of a ping damage character, where she does a little bit of damage and a little bit of building, and struggles to maintain that damage as the minions are constantly healing. Alright, for our Shield Box and Spider character, I have Maria Hill as easy mode. Similar to Groot, she can just focus on building and getting her shield supports out and flipping up at the convenient time, especially in multiplayer when you have other players not flipping down to lean into. Nick Fury and Spider-Man I both had as B tier. Spider-Man mainly because he's really strong, right? He has access to stun, big chunks of damage so that he can burst. His threat removal thrives on having minions in play, and you will have minions that you defeat in this scenario. Spoiler alert. And he has a high defense, so he doesn't have to worry about dealing with these giant boost cards too much. But the problem is Spider-Man thrives off of that spider sensibility. He needs the villain to initiate an attack against him so he can draw a card. And instead, that villain is going to heal for the first 2/3 of the game. So Spider-Man can be very strong in a multiplayer game. He can defend for everybody and sort of absorb a bunch of those attacks. But he is kind of weak in a solo or lower player count game if he gets a minion stuck in front of him, because he's unable to get that extra card income from his spider senses. Alright, let's get into our aspect solutions here. So a lot of our aspect solutions fall into those strengths of either building or statusing. And as you can see from this screen, this is all about the status. So for Justice, we have Eros from the Nebula pack. After you play Eros from your hand, confuse a minion for each mental resource you use to pay for him. It is so fun to be the first player in a Thunderbolt scenario and slap down Eros and confuse 2 minions, or 3 minions if you overpaid or something like that. I think you can't do that anymore with the rules. Boo. But 2 minions, right? Just to eliminate half the activations with one ally. Pretty crazy. Banshee, after Banshee thwarts, confuse a minion, so he can be really useful from the Phoenix pack. And then I really like Upside the Head. You do want to be able to be attacking things. After your hero makes a basic attack and damages an enemy, confuse that enemy so you can attack something, bring it to you, and then flip down to be able to ignore it and get that attack off of another player. If that enemy is already confused, you get to stun it as well, so status, status, status. From aggression, we have my favorite aggression ally, Spider-Girl. She is amazing, and she has been amazing since Rise of Red Skull when she came out. After you play Spider-Girl from hand, stun and confuse a minion. Cool. 2 turns of no activations for you to deal with a minion in your face. You love it. So she is great. We have Psylocke, who is the inverse of Iron Fist, right? When Psylocke attacks an enemy, remove a counter from her and confuse that enemy and deal 1 damage to it. So you can get some damage onto an enemy and confuse it. And then obviously drop kick, deal damage, do stun, draw card, do good things. From leadership, I have Squirrel Girl from the Captain America pack. So after she enters play, she's going to ping each character for once. That's going to be great for removing that tough card for other players when they need it. I really like Power Gloves for the same reason. After attached ally attacks or thwarts, deal 1 damage to an enemy, so you can use your allies to thwart, and then you can ping other things. And I really like Mirage from the Storm pack because she is not trait locked like most X-Men characters, but has, after Mirage enters play, choose an enemy whose scheme is less than Mirage's thwart, which is most enemies, and you get to stun that enemy. Great. Statuses. And we're going to keep going on statuses. We really love statuses against these guys, is what I have noticed. Turns out when they don't have steady and stalwart, status is really good. I have never backed down, tackle, and Iron Fist. So just our classic stun package within protection. So we can defend against an attack, get +2 defense, and then stun the attacking enemy to defend from multiple players. We can tackle, stun an enemy if you paid for this attack using a physical resource, deal 3 damage to an enemy. And we have Iron Fist, who works just like Psylocke, stunning things constantly. Actually, now that I think about it, never back down, you wouldn't get to multi-block for the table. You would block for yourself and then stun that character for their next activation. So it's a little bit harder to table defend here because you have to actually be able to pull the defense. You can't just defend and stun something else. But I still like that card because it gives you multiple turns of being able to ignore that minion. Okay, so recommended mod sets. Okay, here's the thing. There are no recommended mod sets for this one because there's no modular sets you mix in. We have tried mixing in an extra mod set in our playgroup, usually things that add attachments to minions, and they can be fun, but they definitely dilute the scenario. You're getting less extra activations, you're getting less of those Thunderbolt cards that move things around. So I recommend just playing it the way it was designed with the 2 to 5 Thunderbolt Elite scenarios and letting those Thunderbolts really ride high by seeing their cards more often. So I'm not going to give out recommended mods. Once we have more Thunderbolt modulars and we can see all the cards in them, I will be very excited to try to craft different solo challenges with these scenarios. But for now, if you're playing 4-player, you're going to eliminate one of the guys, right? So just pick a random one and do it that way. So boost icon, same thing. I can't really tell you exactly how many boost icons there are going to be. It's going to depend on your player count and which modular sets get mixed in. But we can talk through looking at those Thunderbolt mod sets and what they mean. But the Thunderbolt set itself has 3 1 boost icon cards, 5 2s, and 3 3s. So everything is at least 1. And the standard set obviously has 4 0s, 2 1s, and 1 2. So that is 4 0 icon cards. If we look through the rest of the cards here, everything has at least 1 boost icon, except for Radioactive Man. He has 2 cards that have 0 boost icons, but a boost ability that deals damage. So you're always going to be getting some sort of boost from every card you draw, except for those 4 standard cards that are in the standard set. So that can be kind of brutal. There's a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s. I've noticed that I hit 3s and 2s very frequently in this scenario. You can look through the table here if you're watching on YouTube, but generally the Thunderbolt scenarios have 3 to 4 1 boost icon cards, and then 1 to 2, 2 or 3 boost icon cards. So there's definitely some that are easier than others, right? Batroc has 4 1 boost icon cards and 1 2, versus someone like Radioactive Man that has 2 of those 0 icon cards that do indirect damage, plus 2 2s, plus 1 3. But I think that overall the boost icon counts are pretty similar amongst the sets. Alright, let's get on to our scenario rating. I really liked this scenario. Spoiler alert. So, for me, the Goldilocks difficulty was a 5. I think this is a really challenging scenario. I don't feel too challenged on threading out beyond solo when I make classic Kennedy Hawk mistakes. And that's exactly how I want it to be. I don't feel like I'm going to lose to threat, but I can lose to bad luck, poor decision making, and things like that. Speaking of decision making, we have a 5 out of 5 again. We have again this thing where there's a ton of buttons to push, and we have to figure out what levers make our team win. What heroes do we have? What is our board state? What enemies are out there? Where are they? And should we place them in a different order in order to make our team stand out better? Is there a Spider-Man player that wants all the characters in front of him so he can defend and stun them? Or is there a character that wants to have clear access to the villain so that they can do villain attacking shenanigans? Really fun decision making for multiplayer. A little bit less so for solo. I think the decision making becomes very different between solo and multiplayer about which minion you take down and when you decide to attack that backup minion versus not. Uniqueness, 5 out of 5. This is hands down the best multi-villain scenario. And I say that because it's actually a single villain scenario, but the minions are strong enough that they feel like multiple villains. I find it incredibly thematic and fun. It reminds me of the Civil War battle from the MCU with like 2 teams of 6 just laying down. And I really, really enjoy the thematics of watching those minions jump around the board and do their shenanigans while the heroes try to, swat them with a fly swatter. Speaking of thematics again, kind of blurring all my categories together, this is amazing thematics. I am a big Thunderbolts fan. I am a big Shield Comics fan. I am a big Hawkeye fan, as you all know. And the thematics are perfect here for me. I like how much theme for each of the minions they can cram into just a 6-card modular set, but still have it function within the scenario, and that is super fun. Speaking of fun, another 5 out of 5, and this is our first on the MCM channel, 25-point archery target, so we might have to recalibrate ourselves. But if we average this by the 5 categories, that is 5 out of 5 Thunderbolts. So, this scenario is great. Fight me in the comments below. Tell me what you don't like, and I'll tell you how wrong you are. Just kidding. Tell me if you didn't like something, because I'd like to know so I can learn from it. I like the theme. I like the rotation of the heroes in multiplayer. The rotation of the minions in multiplayer. It can be a bit samey in solo, like I'm always doing this thing where I target the thing that comes out in front of me, but every once in a while I have to make up that decision. And the scenario right now can feel very samey in 5-player. Oh my gosh, never. In 4-player, because you end up having the same encounter cards mixed in every time. It's not quite as modular as I'd like at higher player counts, but based on the preview articles, I think that is going to be a removed roadblock for me in the future. So, what do you think of the arrival of the Thunderbolts in Marvel Champions just before the Thunderbolts movie comes out in the MCU? Do you like him? Do you hate him? What do you think about the merry-go-round? And how does this rank amongst other multi-villain scenarios for you all? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll be back next week with the final villain from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box. Spoilers, we will tell you who it is. See ya.